Hello everybody, we have another game with the white pieces against Monosis. We're going to play Caro-Kann against the 1606. Scary. So we play the advanced Caro-Kann. He goes for the second main line with the c5. Um, it's a free pawn, we take it. Most people don't take it, they play c3 and create this pawn chain. That's a much more cowardly way of playing. It's a free pawn, take it. Okay. He develops a knight. What does this threaten? A pawn? Uh, we'll just protect it while developing. He develops a bishop, pins this, re-threatens the pawn because our knight's pinned. So we're going to copy that and we're going to pin his knight and develop, saying you still can't have the pawn. So now he closes the pawn chain with the bishop outside and threatens to develop and win our pawn. And now we say no, b4. We're keeping the extra pawn. There's nothing you can do about it. And this is why you should take the pawn and not play c3, because you can keep it. So he attacks our bishop so that he can break the pin, so that he can take our stuff. We don't want that. So we move our bishop back one square and keep the pin so we don't lose our stuff. And it's very important. He goes b5, kicking our bishop, saying, we're no longer pinned, I'm going to take your stuff. We can't let him do that, so we have to en passant. Don't forget about en passant. Keeping the diagonal open on the knight, keeping the pin. So he doesn't recapture with the queen. He takes here with the bishop, giving a check. What does this threaten? It's a check. What's the drawback? His knight's hanging with check. So if I go c3, it's a forcing move. And now he has two pieces hanging. Not sure how he defends this. Perhaps queen b6. If I take his bishop. Yeah, no, that wouldn't work. None of this works, and he resigns because he hangs the knight with check and a fork, and we beat the Caro-Kann in 1600 rated player in 10 moves. I can't end the video here because it would be a 2-minute video. So we're going to play another one. So now you guys know, take the pawn. Try to follow the sequence of moves that I just did. We play e4, and the player fourth, rated 1625, goes for this very modern setup. We're going to assume he's going to castle kingside and prepare a queenside castling. So we're going to develop our knight and our bishop from the queen side. We're going to lift our queen, and now we're ready to castle queenside with two pawns in the center. No problem. So black immediately jumps his knight here because if he gets to take our bishop, we never have the bishop h6 checkmate ideas. So that's fine. We'll provoke some pawn moves. He's eventually going to take it, but we'll go here and provoke one of these. Just because maybe it makes his position a little worse. Hard to explain. I mean, f6, you can obviously see it blocks the bishop. h6, a little harder to see why it may not be good for him, but it weakens the g6 square. So he goes f6. But it kind of blocks his bishop a little bit, weakens the light squares. Looks a little funny. We're just going to go back. Maybe he'll keep pushing. Maybe he won't. And now his knight, again, our side of the board. And what happens when stuff's on our side of the board? We go crazy and we take it and we kick it. So he develops his bishop to this diagonal. What does it threaten? Our queen. It's defended. What's the drawback? I mean, no real drawback, except we get to play f4 and put more pawns in the center. The f6 move and the bishop h move, you should notice those moves took away the squares from his knight, right? So if I kick the knight, trapped. Very easy to miss that. Very easy to miss that. Of course, he may try something like g5 in response, but still important to see. Okay, so he goes f5. This gives his knight a square back, right? But it pins the e-pawn to his queen. It defends the knight, it attacks their center, but we get to use this tempo to kick the knight. It only has one square, right? So he doesn't have time to take in the center. And now that he moved back, we always, whenever we can kick a knight in the center, we have to consider it. We push, he takes. Well, you can't take this way, queen hangs. So if you take this way, queen trade, we also don't want that. So we do want to push, but just doesn't work in this specific scenario. We could take and double his kingside pawns. That's an option. We could also just defend the center with the move like bishop in here. We could also long castle and maybe sack the pawn even, but that seems a little unnecessary. Taking would develop his bishop. So unless you have a good follow-up, you don't do that, do we? What about g4? g4 is kind of crazy looking. The knight in here hits our queen. And then if we take, we don't have the fork I'm looking for. So let's not do anything crazy. Let's just develop our bishop and defend the center. Since our position looks really good, right? Knight's going to go here. Long castle. So he develops a knight. What does this threaten? The pawn. And maybe this knight jump, potentially. Okay. I don't really care if he wants to spend time taking the bishop. I do care about my pawn though. So I'm going to develop a piece and defend it. If he wants to waste 3 turns to take this, go for it. And so he does go for it. You could avoid it easily because his light squares are so weak he can't even do anything about it. I mean, I don't care if he takes it, but this diagonal is like really free and open, so I'm just gonna do it. It does offer up this square to my opponent. It gives him the option of taking with the knight, but I don't know. If he takes with the knight and I take with the knight, then this is hanging. Yeah, it's just super suspicious. So he pushes his pawn. This blocks my diagonal, but it pins his knight to the queen because it undefends one time. So maybe I can push. If he takes, again, you can't really take either way because of where my pieces are. So that is a little bit annoying, but we have lots of moves. For example, we could jump our knight in here. We could probably kick the knight. Sure, we can long castle. Long castling, you have to be careful of this diagonal. So let me just block that diagonal from the bishop and threaten this pawn. And now I feel better long castling, not having to worry about this bishop on the dark squares. And now his bishop's really dumb. If he trades it, we'll have a lot of pressure. And black is kind of cramped. He did some moves with the knights at the edges of the board. But at the end of the day, is it really worth it? I don't know. This pawn's hanging. His position's loose on this diagonal. Once I consolidate, he always has to watch out for e5. Also, there's taking here. Like if he castles and the pawn's pinned, then he has to take with the g pawn. That's ugly. These pieces are 2 squares away, so if I can ever get a g4, g5 with tempo, I could fork him. There's just so many things. Kicking this knight. So he goes here. What does this threaten? Our bishop, and to gain control of the e4 square. The drawback gives up control of all of the dark squares in the center. If we take this pawn, it hits his queen. If he takes our knight, it's a pawn for a piece. We take a second pawn, hitting the bishop. If he takes our pawn, It's pawn for the piece. We get a piece. He gets a piece. We get a piece. He gets a piece. We get a piece. Does that work? I mean, I'm not castled, but neither is he. He has this. Oh, no, this takes here, actually. So he hits the bishop in the pawn. Very weird. I mean, it's not weird, but this sacrifice I'm looking at is weird and unnecessary. I'm just gonna take the pawn with the pawn. Yeah, I think it worked, but that was just a lot of calculation. I could have messed up at any point. Um, and if I'm gonna calculate that for real, I'd rather do it not on like in silence by myself. So he hits my bishop, opens up the e file. I guess I'll move my bishop. It also takes away the square from his knight, though. Where should I move my bishop? There's not like a great space for it at the moment. I guess I'll just look at the center for the time being. Maybe if I ever play g4, undermining. So he gives the queen check. That's not a big deal, though. It doesn't really do anything. Yeah, I probably should have just put my bishop on e2. I don't even know what I was thinking. I could do that now. I could move my king, maybe to just f2, but that seems weird. So let's just put our bishop here, and then we'll long castle. Or we'll kick his knight, then we'll long castle. Yeah, I should have put my bishop here to begin with. I don't know why I didn't. But whatever, we wasted a tempi. Although, I don't think queen here is like a big improvement for him, so it also walks into this because his knight. So he moves his knight, but what does this threaten? My queen, my knight, my other knight. The drawback, there's potential discoveries here, which should be scary for him. But he is hitting my queen. So let's start by taking the knight, which is hitting my queen. Forcing move. I assume he wants to take back with something. Okay. I don't see any good discoveries. This knight's a little loose. We could go a3 or c3. But if you go c3, I mean, this doesn't work that well, but I guess to stop c5 and kind of force him to go back, let's get an a3 now. Just so he could block his own c pawn. Oh, yeah, he can go here and put pressure here. That's fine too. Maybe we castle short, actually. I changed my mind. Because he put his knight here. So let's hit it again. We don't want him to keep it in the center, you know? Knights are clumsy pieces. They can't move well. So if you kick them around, they may just not have good places to go. Bishops are a lot easier to play with. And now we can castle short because this is basically locked. So it's not like he's going to pawn storm us. He does have a passed pawn here, but I don't see it going anywhere. If it ever pushes, it helps my bishop tremendously. So he goes his knight here. What does it threaten? Well, a little pressure here. You don't want to attack it again because then he has a good square in the center, right? So you don't want to attack it like that. So let's castle. Now when we do discoveries, and if he takes this, it doesn't come with a check. So we might have some new ideas with the knight in the future. Maybe we can harass this by playing this. Maybe we can b4 and gain more space. We can move our rook maybe to D and C files. Might be the most likely to open. I really want to find a good move with my knight, but I'm just not seeing it. I'm sure it'll come though. So he develops, controls what he can. No big deal. I'm gonna improve my rook. Put some over defend this pawn. Okay, so he castles that way. Queen side. So we're opposite side castle right now. So that is my cue to full send this guy, starting with b4. I gotta be careful about my center and the extra on my queen, so I might have to move it at some point. Okay, so he gets the bishop in, blockading with tempo. Okay, I have to move my rook, so let's move it to its other active file. And we'll have to kick this out at some point. Maybe even trap it with b5. It's interesting. Now I'm also noticing that this... Did I have that before? Yeah, after he castled, I had maybe knight f3, protecting the bishop, and with the skewer, what did I do? I went b4. Okay, so I'll have it next, like this. If he takes my knight, I get the queen. And if he moves the queen, I take the rook. Or actually, if I go here, he can move his queen, let's say, here, and try to counter, like this. Counter skewer. Interesting. So he moves his rook to get out of the skewer, but what's the drawback? My pawns are right here. So can't I just fork this guy? I'm just gonna fork. I don't want to calculate. I have a minute and 30 seconds. I see two pieces. Just push the pawn. And that's the drawback of not having space. That's the purpose of pawns. Pawns have three roles. One, you move them to develop your own pieces, to open diagonals for your bishops, queens, and rooks. That's one. Two, you move them to stop your opponent's pieces from being active. You take away the knight squares. You stop the bishop diagonal, right? So the first reason is to make your pieces good. The second reason is to make your opponent's pieces bad. The third reason is to promote. That's it. But that's later, and that's after you've achieved 5th or 6th rank progression by naturally during the course of a game, and then you can promote. So this guy moves his rook out of the way. Free knight, free access to the king. This is all good stuff. What do we want to do? We still have this discovery, but I want to still wait for a better time. Let's just get our bishop in with tempo. We only have a minute. Let's see where his rook goes. And now we'll trap his bishop and then attack it. We also have moves like, well, check, check, here, here. That's no good. So yeah, queen b4 is our idea. He can try to, I don't know, go here, here, takes. But that opens up his king, so. He hits our queen, but we're moving our queen anyway. And this is never going to happen. Also, he opened up our light square, so we're definitely going to move this back. Which hits the queen, protects the queening square, has a beautiful outpost. He takes the pawn that we undefended by moving our queen. But what's the drawback of his move? He opened up the diagonal to his queen. Free queen. Better than free bishop. What's better than a free bishop? A free queen. So better than a free queen? Checkmate in one. You always want the better thing. We're never satisfied. We always want more. Mada. Moto. Guy, you lost your queen. You can resign now. This would be the correct moment to resign. He does not. He takes my knight. He wants to flag me, so I auto recapture. I have this fork in the works. Okay, let's throw in this check to block the rook, but sneak attack checkmate. That's the real thing, is the sneak attack checkmate, which the brain does not process oftentimes. This guy seems to have seen it, so that's nice. But now we have the sneak attack. Checkmate again. With 40 seconds on our clock. Can we do it? Yes, we can. To block checkmate, he has to move his rook over. And, I mean, he doesn't have any pieces. He can resign. Hopefully, you guys learned something from this game. You'll also notice that as soon as you get a little bit of pressure, or you kind of outplay your opponent, like I played b5, he's like, oh no, my bishop's trapped. He started blundering things in the center. He started like, that's the way these players play. Once they start to feel they're losing, or they think they're losing, or they feel they're lost, they start doing crazy things to try to throw you off your game. They start sacking stuff, and a lot of times it's not good. It's emotional. So he does the only move. I'm just going to take the rook. I have 30 seconds. Let's go here. Very subtle move. The purpose is to defend the bishop, the pawn, because this pawn helps create funny mating nets. Also creates space for a rook. Okay, let's just king f2 it real quick. I mean, I have 2 rooks, but still. Okay. He's just desperate. We can put a rook here. We can put a rook here and try to win that way. There's a lot of ways. Well, now that this square is permanently covered, I suppose we can go for this one. It's kind of tricky. He can't take because it's covered. He can go here or here, I guess. But now after I attack it again, how do you stay connected to this square? I mean, you can go here, but I'll take it, right? So I could take it. Let's just take it. And now I could put my rook here. But first, oh, there's no need to do first. He moved his rook, which blocks his own escape. Boom. Checkmate. 1, 2, 3. So I just did a little triangulation so that I can get my pieces here, which is a checkmating pattern. I did it kind of fast, but I had 11 seconds on my clock, so you can always go back and rewatch to see what I did. Hopefully this helps you take out a 1600 rated player on Lichess. Simple logical stuff. Nothing fancy. Take free pieces when they give them. And good luck in your chess climb, guys.